So in this segment, we're going to be talking about the huge rise in domestic abuse cases being dropped in England and Wales. So I saw this story and I thought it's definitely worth covering. And then my brother saw it on my computer, and he was like, "Yeah, you definitely should cover this." So here I am, because this story is really important. We have talked about domestic abuse before on the channel. We've talked about how if you're a fiscal conservative who doesn't understand much about life, it costs the economy more to not deal with domestic abuse than it does if we actually dealt with it, because of the cost of dealing with the injuries, the murders, the fallout of them. So if you're one of those people who doesn't care about humans in general, but just cares about being fiscally responsible, I would suggest you have a look for that video and see how much it costs the economy. But if you care about human beings, you'd realise how bad the situation is right now in the UK with regards to domestic abuse cases being dropped, because this is truly terrifying stuff here. So victims of alleged domestic abuse are seeing their cases dropped at a rapidly increasing rate, according to data outlined by the BBC. So the time limit to charge for common assault, including instances of domestic abuse, is 6 months. So the police have only 6 months to charge someone for assault. If they don't do it, the case is dropped. Now, Priti Patel is looking at changing those rules to 2 years, but the main issue isn't just this, it's the fact that there aren't enough police officers to deal with the cases. So nearly 13,000 cases were dropped in England and Wales over the past 5 years after the authorities hit that limit. So once it hits 6 months, that's it. And let's not forget, domestic abuse cases aren't the victims don't contact the police straight away. It can be a month or two before they contact the police because of fear of reprisal attacks. It might take them time to get out of the toxic situation, or they might think that, look, if I don't deal with this now, the other person may kill me if I don't go to the police. And if the police don't deal with the cases because they run out of time or for whatever reason, it does make the abuse victim's life far worse. So campaigners say women are being denied justice, and the police and the prosecutors should be given more time. New figures relate to common assault cases, which include things like a push, threatening words, or being spat at, which are normally dealt with at a magistrate's court. But 3/4 of all domestic abuse cases, including sexual assaults, are closed early without the suspect being charged, according to a report by Her Majesty's Inspector of Police or whatever. Can't pronounce that word. And just 1.6% of rape allegations in England and Wales result in someone being charged, something the government said is deeply ashamed of, but will do nothing about. The government has hollowed out the CPS, has hollowed out police forces, has caused massive problems with other police forces like the Greater Manchester Police, has done nothing to resolve the issues within the Met Police. So the government saying we're deeply ashamed and we need to resolve these issues is funny, because the Tory party are the ones who created these problems, who helped to exacerbate the backlog at courts, which is something we'll talk about towards the end of the video. Victims of domestic common assault are sometimes reluctant to come forward, and the cases can be complex, which is why campaigners say police should be given more time. A government spokesperson said all allegations should be investigated and pursued where possible, and money has been invested to support victims of such crimes during the pandemic. The money is not enough. The situation was already bad before the pandemic, already bad, and it's only gotten worse. Yvette Cooper, who chairs the Select Committee, said it's a shocking fact that thousands of cases a year and getting worse are just being timed out. She told BBC News. Abuse cases rise, but fewer people are charged. You can see here the numbers. The abuse cases are going up massively, over 160,000 between the years 2020 to 2021. But the rates of being charged are falling. You'd think they would go up. Just by law of average, they would go up, but no, they've gone down. There are so many reasons why victims and survivors of domestic abuse might not be able to report an assault straight away, but then to be told the perpetrator is just going to be let off because they've run out of time is completely wrong. I 100% agree with Yvette Cooper. This 6-month time limit is meant to keep the criminal justice system moving, but campaigners are calling for it to be extended to 2 years in instances of domestic violence. True, it should be extended, to keep the criminal justice system moving. The justice system is barely moving as is because of things like this, but also the fact that the government have made massive changes to the funding of the judiciary, where judges have less sitting days, which means less court hearings are being heard. We've covered this previously. It's insane. Erica, who founded the Victims 2, was encouraged to report her abuse to police on leaving her relationship, but was told no charges could be brought because the police had failed to properly file the initial report and the time limit had expired. Now, this could be malice. This could be the police choosing not to deal with domestic abuse cases, or it could be incompetency. But either way, there should have been some sort of mechanism to resolve this issue, because it's not fair on the victim. Not at all. They were a victim of a crime and then potential incompetency from the police, and therefore she will not get the justice she deserves. Honestly, it's just shocking how bad things are in this country. She said, there was a pit in my stomach that didn't leave me for weeks or months. I felt like they took me for a joke. It wasn't taken seriously. It didn't seem like they valued my story. So that seems like malice rather than incompetency. It really does. And surely the IPCC should be able to get involved at that point. To me, 6 months isn't enough time to even fathom that sort of experience to allow someone to get the support they need before coming forward. This 6 months not only applies to victims of abuse, but also applies to the police as well to get it done. So if the person reports the crime, say 2 months after, the police only have 4 months to investigate. A police force that's already overrun and does not have the numbers it needs to resolve, to look into crimes, already stretched. No chance. Miss Erica said, Miss Erica and campaign group Refuge are backing moves by Miss Cooper to amend the police crime and sentencing and courts bill currently making its way through Parliament. The figures obtained by the BBC using a FOIA from 30 of the 43 police forces in England and Wales reveals a huge increase in allegations of common assault involving domestic abuse, but a fall in the number of charges being brought. That's how messed up the system is right now. Honestly, it's shocking. They put it in the graph up here. To be fair, if you want to have a look, you can just pause the video and you can get a better look at the numbers. But there are more numbers to look at as well. From 2016 to 2017 to 2020 to 2021, there were at least 12,982 cases of common assault that were flagged as involving domestic abuse, in which no one is being charged due to the time limit. So this is just down to bureaucracy, really. That's the reason why so many of these cases weren't pushed. There's been a 159% increase in the number of times common assault has been flagged as involving domestic abuse, but have not been charged because of this time limit. The data was not broken down by gender and covers both men and women. You can look at it here in 2020 to 2021. Almost 4,000 cases not being, someone not being charged due to the time limit. What more can you say apart from the fact that this government perpetually fails victims? And this is more evidence of why we need to get involved in the system. Because yes, we might not be victims of domestic abuse, but other people are. And this government will not do enough to help victims, won't do anything at all. The numbers have been getting worse. You can't blame the pandemic for this, because you can see consistently the numbers from 2016-17 to 2019 have been rising. You can't blame COVID for these. Don't even try it. We'll go further. So we've talked about that. The numbers going up in the same period. The number of these common assault cases that resulted in charges being brought fell down by 23%. By law of averages, you would assume they would go up, but no. A spokesperson for the government said all allegations should be investigated and pursued rigorously. Blah 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 blah. You don't care. We have invested millions into vital services. You've cut more money than you have invested over the last decade. Let's not forget that. Perpetrators of domestic abuse do untold damage, yet you don't care. We sympathise with any victim, but you don't care. Louisa Ralph, the lead for domestic abuse at the National Police Chiefs Council, said, "We know there are many reasons why victims may not immediately report offences, particularly in cases of domestic abuse, where victims can face coercion and other barriers to coming forward." But yeah, the government don't care. We'll talk about this in a second. The numbers being cut. The Tories' cuts to police are devastating our communities and leaving them exposed. Under the Tories, 21,000 police officers have been axed, and recorded crime is rising at the fastest rate. So the police only have 6 months to investigate a domestic abuse case, an assault charge even, and the numbers of police have been cut. Sorry, I'm scrolling around. You can see here the number of charges dropping. You can see here the number of police officers that have been cut over the last decade, 21,000, and these are experienced police officers who are going to be better able to deal with the charges than newer police officers can do. Police officers facing pay freezes. So this is an industry people wouldn't want to go into anyways, because you're only going to get paid. So police bosses have criticised governments to freeze the pay of officers earning more than 24,000. So that's a job where you're not going to get the pay rises you deserve for being a police officer. So you're going to get people leaving the industry. That's what you're going to have, people leaving the police force, because the pay's not worth it, the hours are ridiculous, and you're massively overstretched. And if you are a decent police officer, you're going to see these numbers, and you're going to realise you can't do your job properly because you don't have the numbers all the time to deal with domestic abuse cases. So, we can see here that the Home Secretary has backed calls to change the law to give victims of domestic abuse more time. They want to change it from 6 months, but Patel has agreed to extend that time frame to up to 2 years. But then you face a further problem, which is that Dominic Raab can't say when the court backlog will be cleared. The UK is facing a massive court backlog caused predominantly by the hollowing out of the CPS and the other cuts to police forces, etc., and the judiciary. That's what the government are facing right now. So have they got the numbers here? So yeah, you can see the backlog of criminal cases waiting to be heard. So you can see it kind of dropped slightly into Q2 of 2019 even, but they've rose dramatically. But we had a massive backlog of around between 30,000 and 40,000 cases. That was down to Tory cuts, and they've only got up. And because the government aren't investing the money into the judiciary that they need, the numbers are only going to get worse. They're only going to get worse, and what more can you say apart from the government have failed domestic abuse victims? And the simple fact is, if you keep voting for this government, what you're telling people is you don't care about domestic abuse victims. Because if you did, you wouldn't be voting for them. Because as we've shown, the number of charges are going down, and sorry for the rapid scrolling, the number of cases have gone up. But the 2-year extension will help, but you don't have police officers that are going to be able to deal with the cases. So what you're going to do is have a massive backlog in domestic abuse cases which are yet to be looked into properly, which will further create a negative spiral, because you're going to have more and more cases that are going to increase in this backlog because now the time limit has been extended. I'm not against the time limit being extended, it's a good thing, but unless you have the police officers and the detectives to deal with all the cases, you're going to create a different kind of problem with a huge backlog of victims having to constantly call into police forces to ask them, are you looking into my domestic abuse case? And they're going to say, oh, we've got a huge backlog. And even if you can get it to court, there's a massive backlog of domestic abuse cases. So that's not even it might not even result in any justice apart from a prolonged agony, because we have a massive backlog in court cases. It's just sad. It really is. That this government have failed to help some of the most vulnerable people in society. But the government don't care about you. They really don't. They don't care about domestic abuse victims. Never have. But anyways, I'm going to leave it there. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Like, comment, share, subscribe, and hopefully I'll see you in the next one.